Hey guys, it's Brandon. I wanted to go over a game I played the other day. It was a blitz game. I wasn't recording, but I found it instructive for me, and I thought maybe some of you could gain something from an illustration from it. And it's about sort of playing with a space advantage, and sort of maneuvering within the space advantage and how to use it to come up with a winning game. If you're looking for a game with a fancy sacrifice and a checkmate or tactics, then this game is not for that. I mean, this is almost the definition of a positional game, and but to me, at least, that doesn't make it any less enjoyable. So I was white and I played c4. He played b6 and bishop b7 after knight c3. Just development, knight f6 and bishop g7. So both of his bishops are fianchettoed on the long diagonals, sort of in a hyper modern sense. I've never seen this opening in the ECO code. It's just sort of something you get when people play blitz. They just sort of play stuff like this. So bishop g2, fianchettoing. He plays a knight out, knight to c6, and knight to f6. So this may be some sort of system he's working with. I don't know. Just sort of, no matter what your opponent does, you just sort of do this and strike later. I don't think it's particularly good. I mean, yeah, your bishops are both fianchetto. They're indirectly putting pressure on the center, and the knights are sort of watching the center, but there's nothing going on there. He hasn't put a single pawn there. So d3, just getting ready to develop the bishop. b3. So he plays this move, knight to g5, just opening an attack on this particular knight here. It's maybe he was just hoping I wouldn't notice. It's pretty easy to defend, although that does temporarily pin this knight to the bishop because this bishop is unprotected. So he just plays this knight out, back to g5, to e5. It's a centralized knight, and I don't mind taking it off because I'm interested in opening up my light square bishop on its long diagonal. So e3, this is preparing d4. Just put a pawn in the center and play for something like d4, d5 with tempo. He played this move, knight to a5, opening up this long square bishop. I thought about taking. I wasn't sure whether I preferred the knight on b5 or a5 or b7. They seem both like bad squares for the knight, so it didn't particularly matter to me. d4, gaining some space. So the bishop exchange, and then bishop back. So at this point, you'll notice I have absolute, complete control over the center, and he has literally no control over the center. The only piece or pawn he has in the center is this bishop hitting these points here, which of course are not really. It's not really doing anything. I could stick a piece there if I wanted, because it's protected by the pawn, and this point is of course protected by the queen, the pawn, the bishop, indirectly. My knight's controlling these light squares, so completely dominating the center. He hasn't got any space for his pieces. Meanwhile, I've got much more space. His pieces are all essentially, except for the knight, combined to the first. The heavy pieces combined absolutely to the first rank, because he hasn't moved any of these center pawns to give them ways out. The bishop is stuck on this, controlling this square, and if he wanted to move it out, that's the only place it could go. Well, I guess he could go here, but what would he really be doing there anyway? And no scope for the rooks, and this knight is looking like a big dummy over here on a5. So playing with a lot of advantages here, and I haven't actually engine checked this, but let's see what the engine says. So at this point, it thinks I have about a half, two-thirds of a pawn worth of advantage. I disagree with that from a positional standpoint, but I'm not an engine, so in any case, I played knight to e4, just getting the knight onto a nice square in the center because I have free reign there. I can put any piece wherever I want in the center. He plays c5, finally striking in the center, trying to break my grip. That's a good move. It had to come eventually if he wasn't going to play something like d5 or e5. But I'm perfectly happy to let him exchange. Just want to get this bishop protected. That was the point of this move. Because he was, I want to be able to play. Now he allows me to play this move d5 with tempo. Okay, a couple things here. Maybe I wasn't going about this exactly right, because when you have the space advantage, you're not supposed to try to trade pieces. And I'm allowing him to make these exchanges. But yeah, I figured, I have all this space, and he has literally none. All these squares here, from the 4th rank on down, essentially, are under my control. And his pieces are still, except for the knight, limited to the 1st rank. So, queen to c4, just c3, slightly improving the position of the queen. Attacking this knight. It goes back to an ugly square where he intends to trade it on this square here. And at this point, I noticed that this pawn here on e7 is pretty weak. And if I can get a lot of firepower focused on this point, which I can because I have all this space for my pieces to move around in, it can be a real weakness for him, and it does become that, especially now. After he plays d6, this move was a bit of a slow move for me. I should have just doubled the rooks right away, but I decided to double them now, so I wasted a tempo not doubling the rooks right away. But I've got too much pressure on this e point for it to really do anything about it. And here he makes the fatal mistake. This rook to e8, he should have played the other rook here, because he could have, if I decided to triple on this point, he can't, of course, move the pawn forward because of pawn takes, and then the 2 rooks, and I just want a pawn, and I'll have a pass pawn very close to being queening. So he has to passively defend this pawn, and he picked the wrong rook. If he had instead picked this rook, if I decided to triple, he could, play something like rook here to here, or even king here to add another defender to that point. But he played the wrong rook, blocking this rook in and not giving it any scope. So from here, it's just a simple matter of rook e4, which I can do because I have complete control of the center and space. And here he plays queen to b7, sort of x-raying my king here. And I didn't like the idea of something like this pawn being pushed. I thought this was sort of a solution. This pawn being pushed, and then if pawn takes, I can't recapture the pawn because this pawn is pinned. And I said, my advantages aren't going anywhere, so we get out of this pin, get out of any kind of problems like that. Maybe I wasn't clear enough, so let's just say I play a throwaway move. I'll show you the variation I had in mind in the game. Something like this. Now this pawn can't be taken because of the pin on the king. So I thought, I'm interested in attacking that point, and then he can play something like, this move next if I decide to unpin or something like that. So it was not worth it to me. Just get out of the pin. My advantages aren't going anywhere. And he played queen b4, just looking to trade queens. And I suppose I could have traded queens and then gone right into the rook endgame, but tripling, and now I've breached the 7th rank, and I have a beautiful rook on the 7th, threatening immediately to take the a7 pawn, but also threatening this d6 pawn, which is weak. It has no defenders, it's backwards, it's fixed, and there's absolutely nothing he can do about this endgame. I mean, this endgame is totally winning for me. I don't know let's see what the computer says. I haven't analyzed this. Just turn it on real quickly. Yeah, three pawn advantage for me at this point. That's what the computer says. So he plays rook just to defend the pawn, but rook d7, attacking the d6 pawn, takes. He's just maybe trying to get some play on the a file here, but there's really not much he can do, even after winning 1 pawn back. Here, this move I didn't see, but is immediately winning. He plays king to f8, and if I had played this move here, rook to c8, then the king can't come out diagonally, so he's forced to go back. Why can't... It's not letting me make a move here. Of course, it can't go there because of the rook. So it's forced to go back to g7, and then this pawn queens, pretty easily. And then, it's just game over from there. So, after king there, I didn't see that. I played yeah, I played d7 and just got the rook behind it. And my idea was just to push this pawn up. Maybe he could have tried rook to d8, but that wouldn't have been enough. Just c6, and he resigned, because there's no way for him to stop me from queening these pawns. If he plays something like, or at least, you know, he have to give up the rook for these 2 pawns, and it would be 3 pawns plus a rook versus a king and 3 pawns. So if he tried a blockading, something like that, then rook to e5. You know, with the idea is if he plays a throwaway move like this, then rook check, winning the rook, and then queening. If he plays king to d8, rook to e5, let's see, king to c7, and then of course if rook here, I mean, it's just not good for him. He could take here, I guess, then queen, and we're back to the same concept. So in any case, no tactics at all involved in that game. There was one tactic with the queen here on the diagonal against my king that I avoided pretty quickly. Just a game where you play with space and you fix some points that are targets in your opponent's camp and target the weak points, and there's nothing they can do about it. It just leads to a winning endgame. So that was fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed that and found it instructive, and we'll see you next time.